Staying with the story, can employees be forced to vaccinate? The Congress of South African Trade Unions says medicine is a consensual relationship between doctors and patients. Well, to discuss the rights of workers, we're now joined by Matthew Parks. He's the Parliamentary Coordinator for the Congress of South African Trade Unions. Matthew, thank you for your time today. Discovery insists that its mandatory jab policy does recognise the right to object to the vaccination on religious and other grounds. So they're taking it on a case-by-case basis. Is this approach balanced enough to protect the rights of employees in your view?
Look, it's a complicated issue, Anika. There's many issues we have to balance at once. We have to balance individuals' constitutional rights to choose for themselves whether or not to take medication, or in this case, the vaccine. We also have to look at the interests of society at large. So it is a balancing act. In the Occupational Health and Safety Ministerial Directive that we drafted at NEDLEC, dealing with workplace safety during this pandemic, we had said if there is going to be a workplace vaccination plan, there must be engagements between the employer and the workers and the unions. So we would want to call upon Discovery to do exactly that now, to go and engage with the staff, to get their buy-in, to convince them of the need to vaccinate, to embrace it, to support it, etc. I think it is helpful in this statement, which I read, that they actually weren't as blunt as the media speculation said they were, that they did recognize workers' constitutional rights to decline to vaccinate if they want to, for freedom of religion or belief, but also for medical grounds, because currently women who are pregnant are not vaccinating until that health science is certain that it's safe for them as well. I think our fear, Anika, is that other employers might take this as a green light to go and force all workers to vaccinate, whether they agree or don't agree. And we've seen many instances across the country where workers are being fired, being dismissed, victimized for not vaccinating. Our approach is the one of the President, the Minister of Health, is that we need to encourage everybody to vaccinate. It's for their own interests, it's to protect themselves, to protect their families, so that we can also protect other workers. We can emerge from the pandemic, from the lockdowns, we can rebuild the economy and save jobs, but it has to be a method of persuasion, not a punitive method. So we have to incentivize and encourage and educate people to embrace it, but we shouldn't be going down the rabbit hole of bullying people, because you see, if you look at the United States and the countries in Europe, it's become very polarized, become heavily politically toxic, and we really want to avoid that kind of a politically poisoned atmosphere in South Africa. We want to get people to embrace it for their own benefit, but not to go down a toxic fight, which will just distract us from our focus on getting everybody to mobilize and to vaccinate.
Matthew, does Cosatu in principle believe that workers would be safer working in an environment where there is mandatory vaccination?
Look, we want everybody to vaccinate. Every single South African who is eligible should vaccinate. But we don't want to force anyone to do something they don't want to do. You cannot go and take 10 million people who, for example, are vaccine hesitant and sit on top of them and force the needle into them. That's going to be a very ugly situation. It's not going to work. I think we also need to bear in mind that we don't know how long the vaccines immunize you for. It could be 6 months, it could be longer. So we might have to go this route twice a year for the next few years. So we really need to get people to embrace it, to understand its importance, and to run with it themselves. We can't afford to become a police state. We're a constitutional democracy, and all our medical health principles are always based upon the patient's consent, whether it's for chemotherapy for people who've got cancer, whether it's for ARVs for people who are HIV positive. The same principle here. But what we really need to focus on is to encourage people and to educate them on why they need to vaccinate, but not to go and threaten them with dismissal and those kind of things, because that's really going to poison the discussion, and it's going to give impetus to the people who are against vaccines and really make it an ugly political fight, which we simply cannot afford.
And we certainly don't want vaccines to polarize people, especially in the workplace. Matthew Parks, he's the Parliamentary Coordinator for the Congress of South African Trade Unions.